Today's episode, we're going to talk about weatherization. Weatherization is after your season, we prep the vehicle to be outside. Some people have the vehicle stored inside in a controlled environment, and some people have it parked on the outside. When you park it outside, it's very important that you drain all the liquids from the vehicle, including the engine, especially the pump. The pump retaining any water will freeze, expand, and it will damage the engine severely to the point of having to rebuild it. So what we're going to do is showing you today is how to blow out this system and how to get all the water from the hoses, from the lines, and from the pump. So the first thing you want to do in the basic operations of the engine, in the earlier episode we talked about the manifold and how we create a suction from a particular tank, and then we have a return to a certain tank. So right now all we're going to do is pump from the 56 gallon, and we're going to return to the 56 gallon, just get the system running to whatever water's in there. But what we're going to do here in this case, being it's sucking from here, I want to send everything back to the biggest tank, which is the 300. I want to send everything from all the tanks and back into the 300. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the water that's here, it's returning to here, is I'm going to switch it. I'm going to put this one on first, and then this one this way. And what will happen is the pump will now take the water from the 56 and pump it into the 300. And once that is completed, you can then go from shutting the 56 to the 80 gallon. So we need to shut the 56 because that's where it's draining all the fluids from and putting it into the 300. We want to open the 80 first and then shut the 56 simultaneously. So now it's going to drain the 56 gallon tank that's here, and it's going to put it into the 300 gallon tank. Earlier I think I may have mentioned 400, but in this case it's a 300 gallon tank, and some of our other units do have a 400 gallon tank. So then when that's drained out and you start hearing it cavitate a little bit and spit, is you take the 56, left 56, and you open that, simultaneously closing the 80. And what that again will do is drain all the water from the 56 and put it into the 300 gallon tank. So you let that happen for a few minutes, and then once it starts getting down to the end that's kind of empty, then all I do is just open up I shut the 56 gallon, and I open up the 300 gallon, and now it's circulating from the 300 gallon and returning to the 300 gallon. It's just looping through the tank. That's all it's doing. So these other tanks, the 56 and the 80 and the 56 right should be empty. And all the water now is into the 400 gallon tank. So now that that's completed, what I'm going to do is I'll shut off the engine, and now it's all in the 400 gallon. So now I can go over the side here. Now this is a drain system specifically for in this case, the 300 gallon tank. All you're going to have to do is open that up. And as you see, the pink is antifreeze. And it would come out water. And you want to drain that out completely of all the water that comes out of there, and then reshut the valve. Now there's another lower point of the whole system, which is your filter. Your filter is the lowest part of your system, which is right here. And what you want to do here is you shut your valve off, you take your filter out, and as you can see, there's a little bit of pink coming out. That's because there's antifreeze in there. But what you want to do is take that off and let all that excess water that's below the tanks freely drain out. What you do is, after you take this off, I don't want to take it off because I'm going to let all the antifreeze out, but you take the lid off, open this up, drain all the excess lines that are lower than the tanks. And when you're done, being that we're here already, is when you're all done weatherizing, you want to leave this valve open and just make sure this is hand tight, and you leave this valve open. Again, that's going to leave expansion in case there's any residual water anywhere. It just has some place to go. Now if we go back to this side, now what we need to do is blow out the hoses. Now in this particular one, we have two different hoses here, a 3/8 and a 1/2 inch. And what you want to do is, this is the 1/2 inch, this is the high pressure. So what we do is we take, similar to this, which is your compressor, pretend this is coming from your compressor, 110 pounds, 140 pounds. You put it onto your quick disconnect. The compressor is putting air through here. You open the valve, this valve, you open up your 1/2 inch hose, and what that will do, and the other valves on the other side I showed you, there's one on the end of the quick release, and there's one at the base of the reel. You open those up, and they will force air through your hose, which would discharge all the water within your hose. There's probably about 3 to 4 gallons of water in those hoses, depending on the size, if it's a 3/8, 1/2 inch, or 5/8 or 3/4. Now that water, you need to let that do for a few minutes, and it'll spit and spit and spit. And then once you think all the water's out, you shut off your air, and you can leave, then you shut this valve here. And what you do is you open your other reel, 3/8, and then you turn this open again, and it'll push all the water out that's in your hoses. Now if you do it correctly, you do not have to put antifreeze in your hose lines. That again, that's going to take 3 to 4 gallons. That probably will be unnecessary, but if you feel more comfortable putting in your hoses, you're more than welcome to. But if you blow it out very clearly with air, and you see nothing but air coming out the end of your hose, you're probably good. Now once that's done, you shut off your air, you shut off your valve. Now when you're done that with the hoses, I'd still open all the valves to your hoses. The one at the end of the quick disconnect, the one at the base of the reel, and when you're all said and done, you want to open up these two, so if there's any residual water left in there, if the water expands, which it will do to turn into ice, it will have some place to go as an extra measure. So once you have that done, you blew out the hoses. There should be really no water left in the system from the pump. The next thing I would do is, with a 56-gallon tank, I'd take the lid off, make sure all your valves are closed, and dump in about 12 gallons, 12 to 15 depending on how many tanks and line systems you have, but it takes an average of 12 to 15 gallons of a -50 RV fluid, or RV antifreeze, which you could probably get at any hardware store, and you dump it in there. Once it's dumped in there, you open up again your 56, then you return 56, you start your engine and let it circulate. You'll see the pink fluid going through the suction and return. You'll see it down here like you see it in the pump right here. You can see the pink line. That's what's going to look like when you're pumping your system, that the pink fluid will be going through there, and you can tell. So that's coating the inside of the engine, is taking out any residual water that's in there. And it's very important to get an RV fluid that's like a -50 or -40, because what happens, any residual water that's left in your system is going to dilute the antifreeze. So you want to minimize the amount of water that's in the system by all means, and then the ratio of a -50, -40, -30, depending on which ones you get, you want to keep the ratio definitely below 0 for freezing factors. So that's a touch and go sometimes if you put too much water with your antifreeze. So again, it's very, very important to get all the water you can out of the system. But for the most part, if you do it correctly, you can even use that same antifreeze for another whole year when you go to drain it. So once it's running through that system, and what I do is on the return side is it's running, and I'm going to simultaneously go to the 300 and shut the 56. Then I'm going to go to the next one, the 80 and the 300. Then I'm going to go to the 56 and shut that off. And I'm going to go back over to here and open it back here. So now what it did, it took water or antifreeze from the 56 and it transferred it to the other ones very instantly, just for a second. And now it's running again through the suction through the 56 and returning it to the 56. I'm going to do the same thing with the suction. I'm going to very simultaneously shut the 56, open the 300, shut the 300, open the 80, shut the 80 and open the 56. And I'm going to quickly go back to the 56. And all that is doing is temporarily filling the manifold sections and the hoses with antifreeze. Now don't become concerned that all the hoses aren't fully filled with antifreeze. The point of that is just getting the antifreeze in the lower parts of the hoses to mix with any residual water. Now if you notice these hoses here, some of them are filled with antifreeze and some aren't, but that's okay. At the end we'll show you why that is. Now once that is done, your system is fully filled with antifreeze as far as your manifold and your pump and some of your lines. There's going to be a part 2. We're going to stop at this point and have another video of how to weatherize your vehicle. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Winterization.